My name is Drew, and I'm the Aspiring Master, and welcome to the Aspiring Master Presents. This is a show where we talk about the meanings, misunderstandings, and insights about the important words that we use and misuse on a daily basis. Really understanding what we're truly meaning when we talk allows us to convey that meaning and be more understood when we're communicating with others. This not only allows us clearer communication so we can get what we need quicker and with less stress, but also allows us to understand ourselves in more depth than we thought possible. Today on our show, we have our special guest, my wife, Talia Wilson, who, as with myself, is an enthusiastic advocate for personal growth and personal awareness. Today, we're going to be doing part 2 of intimacy. Let's go. So let's talk about the splitting of the difference. So when we're talking about a friendship, we tend to have a level of of shared mental. Generally, a friendship is mostly mental, right?
Most
that what that's okay.
You and
I know. Let's redefine what that is. Mental intimacy. When I'm talking about mental intimacy, you have shared hobbies, you have shared shared
you can
desires.
Talk about
you have
stuff.
shared
a lot of it is
shared
talk.
experiences. You've got the same type of job. You can talk about a whole bunch of stuff and you understand each other. So you have a certain amount of mental intimacy parity there, right? You have a deeper degree of mental intimacy, I think, in friendships than generally more than anything else. Like you would have less physical intimacy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when we're talking about let's graph this. Okay, so let's go physical intimacy, mental intimacy, emotional intimacy. Okay, so when we're talking about friendship, your mental intimacy would be up there, your physical intimacy would be down here, and probably your emotional intimacy would be just kind of jogging a little bit in between the two. Okay, because what happens in that kind of friendship, a lot of the times you'll feel that special kinship because you understand each other, and you create a certain amount of emotional intimacy. Now, the emotional intimacy itself may not be well-rounded. And the reason that I say that is it's not on all levels. You only have emotional intimacy here where you're talking about disc golf, but you don't have any emotional intimacy when you're talking about, say, your spirituality. Maybe you're not part of the same religion, right?
Yeah, it definitely depends on your rapport with that person.
Of course.
Because, like I said before, sometimes you could talk about anything with with one person, and then you can only talk about
certain things with another.
Work or what you do at lunch, like disc golf,
right,
with other people. Yeah, so it definitely depends on your rapport and how you connect.
But I think that when we're talking about friendship specifically, the physical intimacy, it only goes to a certain level, right? If it goes past that level, you start into a different type of relationship.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Okay, so it's like when we're talking about physical intimacy and friendship, it's fairly low, right? Like, I mean, you don't like a hug, right?
Yeah.
That's we're talking that. I'm sure that there are sexual friendships out there that work. I haven't been able to experience or see one that does. It's usually dops over into a different kind of relationship as opposed to just friendship. So
you have to have really clear definitions of what both people want.
Right.
When it starts.
Well, and
then
you have to define what that friendship is.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, there's a communication
and then
like that. Yeah.
Because I've been there.
Right.
And I wouldn't say, I mean, living in a different country, I have to keep in touch with almost everybody vicariously through Facebook. Mm-hmm. But I am still friends with at least a couple, and it's happy birthday, but it's like you still have that underlying, we were intimate once, we may not be as intimate anymore, but mm-hmm. If I messaged you and just said, hey, how's it going, blah 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 type mm-hmm. thing, it wouldn't be seen as, oh my god, why are you contacting me, mm-hmm. that kind of thing. So I mean, it really depends on what the intentions going in and the communication level that people have.
I agree.
Because sorry.
So when I'm talking, well, no, that's fine. When I'm talking about the relationship of friendship, okay, so let's break this down even further. Let's go relationship, acquaintanceship. your level of intimacy is mostly mental, almost always.
Yeah.
Just mental. There's not a lot of emotional intimacy in what we would call an acquaintance. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have a shared hobby or a shared experience that brings you together.
Like the guy at Brugos.
Right. Yeah, Ken.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like we have a little bit of a shared thing. We talk about coffee. We kind of like each other.
Yeah,
Again,
we smile and joke.
We're not buddies. We're not.
No.
So we've got a little bit of mental intimacy there. There's pretty much no emotional intimacy other than you're alive and I care about you as a human being.
Yeah, and you make great coffee.
And you make great coffee, right? And so it's, and then there's just zero physical intimacy in that. Yeah. So when you get into friendship, you are a lot more, you're mental as well, but you get a little bit more or a lot more, depending, emotional intimacy. So you are more trusting on an emotional level with your personal feelings, they're allowed closer to your heart would be the best way to put it.
Right.
Okay.
Now, I think that there's some things in friendships they're going to cross that may not be able to be clearly defined as physical versus clearly defined as emotional. Case in point, you have a friend over for dinner. Maybe you don't, maybe you hug each other goodbye or shake hands or whatever, or high five or slap each other's butt. I mean, whatever rapport you have. But the more intimate part is the meal.
Right.
Is that physical? Is that emotional? Is that mental? I think there's instances like that where they're going to be really kind of enmeshed and they're hard to define.
If you're wanting to define that, let's take a look at it. So no, seriously, let's take a look at it. When you have a friend come over and you're cooking a meal for them, it is on a level, it's a sharing your gratitude with them. It's an expression of gratitude. It's a desire to impress them, right? Seriously, that's there. Desire to impress them. A desire to share like your emotional love of food, right? And it can be a very intimate thing. It depends on how much emotional energy you put into what you're doing, right? And how much emotional trust you have with the person. I mean, a meal can be just as emotionally entwining as anything in life. It depends on how much you put into it and what it is that you mean by it when you do it. If I'm inviting
the engagement chicken. That's
exactly.
What I thought of when you said that.
The engagement chicken.
Yeah.
Right. So it all depends on what it is you're putting on whatever it is you're doing. I think that, yes, we put in a certain amount of emotion into our stuff, right? I'm cooking for somebody and I'm cooking gratitude. I'm hoping they'll like it, but my life isn't hinged on whether they do or not. They could go, oh my God, I can't eat this. And like, no problem. It's not like it's like
quite what I meant, but
I know
you can't really define that as physical or emotional intimacy because they're kind of both.
Well,
you're
and it can
fixing
be
them a physical item, but your emotions are tied into it.
I think that when we're talking about, okay, so let's define where we're speaking. When I'm talking about physical intimacy, I'm talking about literally physical
proximity, right?
Okay, proximity to you.
Okay.
When we're talking about mental, okay, we're talking about shared experiences, passions, all of that stuff. How we if I am talking mathematics and you understand mathematics, then we're talking the language of mathematics and we're sharing and we're excited because there's somebody that can understand what we're talking about mentally, right? And that's what happens when we're talking about shared passions, no matter what. It's a mental thing. It's not a physical thing, right? So when we're talking, it's not physically close, but it's mentally understanding and sharing.
Gotcha.
Right. And so is physical. When you're talking about physical, it's physical understanding, sharing, and closeness, right? Physical intimacy. So we got mental and we got physical. What is emotional intimacy? Now, emotional intimacy is where you trust somebody with your deepest, darkest, emotionally charged thoughts and feelings. And it's mostly feelings, right?
Okay, so that doesn't have anything to do with pasta.
Well, it does. It just depends on what you put onto it, right? Put on
Gruyere.
what kind of sauce you put on your pasta.
Olive
Anyway,
oil and Gruyere.
yeah, well, but I mean, again, it depends on how much of your own person that is at stake if somebody doesn't like it, right? That's
Yeah.
how you can place a bunch of emotional intimacy stuff there. And if somebody rejects it, then a lot of the times you feel like you're rejected emotionally because you place your reputation on your cooking, right? Okay, so you
So it's
can make it
kind
emotional.
of like in Chef when what's his face cooks the pasta for Scarlett.
Yes.
Yeah, because they've been intimate in the past. It's obvious by the way she looks at him, but
Right.
in that scene, it's more about the pasta he's given her
Right.
than
Because it's still sharing
than a
his.
physical
Yeah. I mean, you
relationship.
can make anything mean anything,
Oh,
and
I
it
know
can.
that.
Well, no, I know that, but
Yeah.
I
I
want to
wasn't trying to
tell.
split hairs.
I want to tell the viewers that you can make anything mean anything. So
Yeah.
you can make a meal be emotional intimacy. Okay, it can work that way. You can
Yeah.
translate it. Both people being on the same page that way would work better,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I know with you and me, when I cook when you're not here and doing food prep and it's like, oh, I made you a pasta for later, you know. Yeah, there's some emotion tied into that. I want you to like it. I want basically
Right.
because if you like it, I can make it again,
Well, but it's also an expression of yourself. You are
Yeah.
also placing here I am. And if I taste it and I like it, it feels like I've accepted you. Okay. And well, no, but that's true. Like that,
I
we
know.
do that all the time. We
I
put
know.
those things upon things. And then when somebody rejects it or say, I go, oh, there was just a little too much salt in that, you go, oh, right. That little kid inside you shrivels a little bit when that happens
Too
because
much pepper.
you have placed your uh, sense of self-approval on that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the best way to describe it. So it's when we make something as a sharing, doesn't matter whether they give it up or put it in the garbage. I want to share what you want to have, not what I want you to eat, right?
The cake.
Right, the cake, right.
The cake.
My 40th birthday, Tally made the most horrible cake ever known to man. It was so
blame it on
oversweet.
his mom because we were at his mom's place. She doesn't have a hand mixer, and I had to make it with I stirred it
knife.
with a knife.
Okay, and it doesn't matter how. It was my 40th
No.
birthday. I was out DJing a gig. I came home at what, 12:30.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And Marcus came over because he had just finished a gig too.
Yep.
Marcus came over for my 40th birthday, and you had made this awful, gross sweet cake, and we had brought Coca-Cola with us.
Yes.
It was the best birthday I've ever had ever. Because to me, like, I mean, check this out. It was a really intimate birthday with two people that I love. And and we were just sharing our time together with this really awful cake.
With the green bouncy ball sprinkles.
Green bouncy ball sprinkles.
Oh my
and
God.
You're sharing the story of having dropped them and
they went
searching for it everywhere.
This were at his mom's place, and right? I'm like, oh crap,
So it was, but to me it was fantastic. It was all that I ever want in a birthday. Right. It was,
I'm trying to impress you and be a good girlfriend.
But here it is. I know, but here it is. It was a spiritual experience based on a spiritual, intimate experience for me in that moment of gratitude and joy, because we were physically close in proximity. We're sitting beside each other. I was sharing this physical intimacy with my friends, you and Marcus. Yeah. Emotionally, we were trusting and caring and laughing, having a great time.
Oh my God.
We weren't being fake.
No. And I wasn't offended authentic. That my cake was horrible either. I knew it was horrible.
We were laughing about it.
Yep.
It was just life.
And we recount that story a lot.
And when we talk
about it makes a good story now.
Exactly. When we talk about the mental, Marcus and I were just back from gigs. We were chatting about the gigs.
Yep.
You were talking about some of your experiences with this, and we were just in that kind of sync. And so when you have that combination of mental, emotional, and physical, it became a spiritual experience of really cool, balanced, and the best birthday I've ever had. So that's what we're talking about intimacy and how it can work. And that's with two friends. And I was feeling, of course, super open. That was pretty much the beginning of our relationship, really. And we were in the throes of being in love, right? And so we had all of that going on, which allowed me to even be that much more open to what was going on with you and Marcus and me being in the same space. So when we're talking about that, you see that, totally, we had a spiritual experience of intimacy. So let's go. I want to go back because we started to talk about physical intimacy and our mistakes with it. Okay. Okay. So now I'm just going to recap. So in different types of relationships, we have different levels of physical and mental and emotional intimacy. So closeness, right? We're talking about closeness, vulnerability, trust. Vulnerability, trust, closeness. Okay. Vulnerability, trust, closeness. That's what we're talking about. So we have different levels. So if you're an acquaintance, you have, higher mental intimacy, but not huge, just high mental intimacy. You've may have a little bit of emotional in there and virtually no physical at all. Right. So when you're talking about friends, you have a little bit more physical, pat on the back, a hug, or, a high five when you're getting something done. You have the mental is a lot higher than you would on an acquaintance. So you have your mental, you share hobbies, you share experiences, there's a whole bunch of stuff. You may share spiritual beliefs, religion. You may share a bunch of those things. So those in a friendship, you have a lot of sharing there. And that translates into the experience of your friendship of being more emotionally intimate. So maybe they can tell you their deepest, darkest secrets without you being offended or upset. And so therefore you create a very special, what people would call, best friends, right? So we differentiate between friendship and best friendship. Best friendships, you are more emotionally intimate with a best friend than you are with just a friend. Right? Okay.
These days I define it by who can have a key to my house.
Right. Exactly. But so besties have a lot more emotional intimacy. Okay. In it. So then we're going to move past that to partnership level intimate relationships. Okay. So that's where we're after a partner, like either we're after a partner or we're being a partner with somebody.
Right.
Okay. So now our physical goes way higher, right? Our physical level of intimacy is higher. And especially at the beginning, because we were talking about the love drug. Okay. Actually the physical intimacy is probably like up here in comparison to almost everything else a lot of the time. But you have at the beginning of that relationship, you have the illusion of very intimate mentally and emotionally.
Emotional. I wouldn't say mental is all that high.
That's true.
Unless you've already connected on that level.
Right. I think that the emotional is really high. Mental can be high, but it's
isn't
masked
always
with the emotional, right? A lot of the time it's
or the
masked,
physical,
right? With the emotional and physical.
Yeah.
So as you move along in a partnership, and that love drug falls away, then it becomes like, okay, what does intimacy really mean? And that's where we're taught that intimacy means physical intimacy. Because remember, at the start of a love relationship, we have all of those chemicals going on emotionally that are just making our emotions go frickin' through the roof. And and it's like, and of course the physical intimacy is just shoots right up. we're
Yeah.
having we're having relations all the time, and we're, like, I mean, it's just wow, and the universe is exploding, and it's spiritual, as we would say, right?
Yeah.
Well, the truth is, no, you're just high. But well, it's true, you are, and it's awesome. If you guys haven't, go and Google some Helen Fisher and take a look at her talk, The Brain on Love, The Brain in Love. And it is an absolute joy to watch how little we actually know about why we fall in love, and what is happening in that instance. It really is, you're just high on drugs. Okay, so after you're high on drugs, and wears off, and you start that real relationship, that real partnership. So say you get married, and here you are. Well, now that, and a lot of the times that physical intimacy that we had is kind of
Yes.
lowering.
Yep.
All of a sudden, we're not feeling like we're being intimate anymore because our physicality goes low. Okay.
Well, especially as we age too.
Yes, and as we age. So, and a lot of the times, and once the love drug drops, a lot of that stuff drops. We found out that we actually don't have a ton of stuff in common, or we really don't have any emotional vulnerability anymore, because we're not protected by that love drug that just says, just agree with everything, agree with everything,
yeah.
right?
Or oh, because we don't talk, or we haven't talked about this, can I be vulnerable?
Right. Well,
can I
we
trust
also,
you with stuff?
We fall back into our
Patterns.
old parents' patterns that oh, we're not supposed to talk about this because we were raised in families where we're very fake and we don't talk about real things. A lot of families never even had the sex talk with their kids. They had to learn it from the internet, which is no wonder we're all so screwed up.
Or porn.
But yeah, or porn, like, again, internet. But so all of a sudden, we're now confusing intimacy, like the total intimacy that I talk about as spiritual intimacy that I defined, and which we're looking for. We're looking for that harmony, that joy, that wanting to be with somebody all the time, that stuff that we feel when we're on the love drug. We're looking for that harmony again. And it feels like harmony. It really isn't. It's just fake harmony, but we're looking for the reality of it. And we go, well, they're just not being intimate with me anymore. Well, you go, what does that mean? Well, usually it's mistaken as they're not having sex with me. And the truth is, intimacy, especially physical intimacy, is not just about sex.
Right.
And one of the things that you and I talked about is, the mistake is, if I'm not having sex with my partner, we are not being physically intimate. The truth is, physical intimacy is a combination of a couple of things. You have to have a certain amount of mental intimacy and a certain amount of emotional intimacy to be truly physically intimate with somebody.
You really need to be able to be emotionally vulnerable too.
Exactly. Now you could,
like, I describe it as, feeling that.
Okay.
Whether it's emotion or mental, because sometimes it doesn't feel like an emotion. It just feels like I can feel something like deeper with you underneath the surface. Sometimes most of the time it's emotional. A lot of times it's not.
Okay, so let me reiterate. Yes, you can have physical intimacy without any of the other factors, right? That's okay. But in the harmony of a relationship, the spirituality in this case of a relationship, is where they get mistaken. They think that because there's no sex happening, that the relationship is lacking intimacy, to a degree. And the truth is, yes and no. It's not just physical intimacy that makes this all work.
Right. But and to preface, there are partnerships where they don't have a lot of physical intimacy and it works for them. So people treat it like a requirement in a relationship. You have to have sex. You have to do it this many times a week. You have to, and it's like, no. You could make it your own, however much you want to express that.
here's the thing. I think that
or not.
we've been taught that physical intimacy is the key to getting the other ones.
Well, I mean, when I did that Google search earlier,
Mhm.
anything relating to men, anything, you know, oh, they get depressed if they don't have intimacy, meaning they don't have sex
Right.
often. You know, with the men stuff, it's all about they need sex this much, or they if they can't physically connect to their partner, they get depressed. And it's like
Well,
men, you're
I
reducing men to physical creatures,
but
and
here
that's not.
I think that they're correct to a degree, and the reason that I do is because we're taught that.
No,
We're taught that
I
that
agree.
it is a thing.
Yeah, I mean, and you're a man, so you would know how that feels a little bit more than I would. But I'm just saying, you know, we treat women as emotional creatures. But I'm sorry, if a man can cry, he can become emotional.
Right.
We need to stop not treating men as emotional.
Well,
They need the space to be emotional.
well, and here, let's get to the point here too, is that we have an imbalance of understanding when it
Oh my
comes
God.
to intimacy completely
No
as human
kidding.
beings, because we go, oh, women need more emotional intimacy than they need anything else, and
Do we though?
guys need more physical intimacy. But and if they're not getting that, if the guys
Then
don't
they're
get the
gonna
physical,
cheat.
they're going to cheat.
Yeah.
Or if they're not getting the emotional intimacy, well, the truth is, no, that's only because we've been taught that that's the case.
Yeah.
We
There's
we
plenty of women out there who just want physical intimacy.
That's
Believe me.
true. I mean, but again, that means that they don't get emotionally entangled and they don't have to deal with the emotional stuff that goes
Sometimes
along
it's
with it, right?
easier to
It's
do
like
that, you
absolutely.
know,
And I'm not poo-pooing how
No,
people want to live their lives.
no, exactly.
You can live your life
I've been there,
however you
I've done it,
choose.
and at the time it was fine. Now
But
I wouldn't do that
in
because I
order to
had
be
that.
able to in order to be able to have a great relationship, whether that's a spiritual relationship as we're defining it now,
Yeah.
we need to have balance between them. Okay.
Yes.
You have to be able to be vulnerable, which
Mhm.
means that you have to be able to cultivate and create and keep trust. Okay. And be able to get through fear in order to be able to do it. We've talked a lot about these in past episodes,
Yeah.
including the vulnerability one,
And
which was really
courage
cute.
and yeah.
Courage, yeah. Courage and bravery and the stuff that you need in order to be able to create the trust and experience, right? But you'll also need an understanding of what you really want out of this.
Exactly.
What intimacy, that intimacy is a key component to hopefully our next show, relationship. That having the different levels and understanding the different levels in ourselves allows us to understand the depth of a relationship that we're after with certain people.
Part of the problem is a lot of people go into relationships not knowing what they want.
Of course.
So then when they're in it, it's like, what am I doing? Is this
but they're
right?
also,
You know,
they also don't understand themselves enough to be able to ask or understand the right questions to ask. When we're talking about going into a relationship, it is a really tough thing for somebody to sit down to you. Okay, so let me sit down with you and let's talk about, in order to be able to have a successful relationship. Okay, I'm putting on my counselor voice. In order to be able to have a sexual, in order to be able to have a successful relationship, you need to understand the 4 levels of intimacy, and you need to strive for this level of intimacy. So it's like we're talking about striving for a certain amount of spiritual or balanced intimacy between the 3. That brings you joy and gratitude, right? Because we all are after, like, really, when we talked about the love episode, because we're going to do love revisited too, where in the love we accept whatever without condemnational judgment. We accept
Right.
whomever and whatever they do without condemnational
Yep.
judgment. And that allows them to be authentic with you. It allows them to be authentic with themselves,
Yeah.
which we are totally not.
Right. Well, I think that part of it too is now we have all these classifications of, the MBTI, the personalities, which also have their own little splinter stuff, or the love languages and stuff like that, where, yeah, it's okay to, obviously, it's going to help you better understand yourself and other people. But at the same time, it seems like we're more set on pigeonholing ourselves into, oh, I'm an INTJ who prefers quality time, therefore I don't want physical touch, and anyone who's an extrovert needs to leave me alone.
Well,
and it's like, no, you don't want to think that way.
Well, you can't ignore the whole package and just focus on a section, right? And
That's what I meant. Yeah.
That's what we're doing so much with a lot of these books. We're trying to say you're pigeonholing. We're focusing on one specific area, and we're also focusing in your case, what we're talking about is we're trying to create a feeling by doing certain things.
Right. But I mean, like with the love languages, I find that you're probably more often than not, you're not just one. Like your words of affirmation and physical touch, but you also enjoy the quality time. I'm more a quality time, but I also like the physical touch. I think they're more fluid than what people
well, I agree.
realize.
And I think that as with anything, this is a toolbox. I think that love languages, yes, absolutely. I think Chapman is an important author in this respect, that discovering the things that make people feel comfortable and feel affirmed, in their lives, is a good thing. It's a good thing to have that toolkit. So when you're feeling down, I can go, oh, wait a minute, I'm not spending that quality time, and I should really take some time out and to do that. And it's only not because I'm not thinking about you in the way of I really love you, I always do, but that I get focused on other things and I'm not looking in that direction. And having that as a tool in my kit to remind me to be able to share some of that with you because it's important for you is an expression of love to me, right?
Well, it's like with you, with being words of affirmation and physical touch, but we're kind of backwards on that one, because you leave me the notes.
Right.
I don't leave you the notes, and I'm like, every time you leave me one, I'm thinking, shouldn't I be doing this? Because you're leaving me words of affirmation.
And again, unless it comes from the soul of your being, I don't want it.
No,
really,
it's like, I didn't mean it that. I didn't mean it that way.
I think that
I have left you notes.
Yes, I know, but I think that we get pigeonholed, like you were saying, into, oh, I have to do this for her, but it's not coming from that place of love and sharing and caring and all of those, an expression of gratitude. Really, it's not an expression of gratitude. If it's not an expression of gratitude, a true expression of gratitude, I don't want it.
Exactly.
Because you're just playing, you're just faking. I don't want the fake you just because you want to get something, right?
Well, and also, like, I know that some school curriculums use the love languages. And if it's to get kids to better communicate with each other or establish their needs, so teachers have better control over their class, I don't know. But it's like, I think that unless they're very clear on what they're doing with it, can be a problem, because kids aren't going to stay the same.
Right.
It's like with, like, we were talking about this earlier, like, my nephew, when he was younger, he loved pink. He wore nail polish. I mean, he was, does he do that now? No, he's in the military, and stuff like that, and is this kind of macho guy. Kids change, but also adults can change too.
Right.
Especially as they age and you go through, with women, menopause, their midlife crisis, because they almost always have one. Your hormones and your body chemistry is going to change. And it's like, that's, just because you tested as an INTJ when you were 30, doesn't mean you're going to be one at 60. Just because you were, words of affirmation and physical touch at 40 doesn't mean you're going to be there at 75. I mean, so I think that we tend to do these things, take these personality tests and stuff, and we lock ourselves in a box when I don't think we should be. I mean, I agree they're a great tool and they can help people relate to each other better. That I'm fine with. It's just the sticking with that.
Exactly.
I got this answer. I am that for the rest of my life. It's like this isn't your astrological sign, you know. Right. It's like,
well,
yeah, this stuff can change.
I
People
agree.
Change over time, even adults.
I agree, and to some degrees we don't. Right? Like, I mean, there's some core values
fundamentally. No, we usually don't.
I know, but here I hear what you're saying. I agree. I think that, as with anything, even this, when we're talking about intimacy, when we're talking about these 3 levels of intimacy, and when I'm making comparisons to, partnership level intimacy, to friendship level intimacy, to acquaintance level intimacy, there's always going to be varying degrees. Some people will say that an intimate, you can have intimate friends. There's going to be levels of gray in between there. But what you'll find is, within these definitions, you will have more physical, less physical, more mental, less mental, more emotional, less emotional. Yes. However, we define that for each other to a degree. I mean, we can have, say you have 60% physical, emotional, mental. Well, that's a pretty balanced state, even in a relationship.
No.
So if you have 60% of that in the relationship, then you may even have a really good relationship, and you have a certain level of gratitude and love there, right? Love, gratitude, and joy. You want it high in interpersonal relationships anytime to get that understanding, that mesh of spirituality. But it's always it's a tool to be able to understand where you are on that spectrum and how to define it. So,
well, and also relationships ebb and flow too.
Yeah.
I mean, in the beginning you may have just a ton of physical intimacy, and then it tapers off, but that can also come back too.
Let's take a look at, let's give an example. In our relationship, we had a fair period, like 6 or 7 years, of where our physical intimacy was once a month or so, but we were also okay with that. At the time, we weren't going, oh, I feel like we should be, but neither of us was in that space. No,
we were like not in
we just weren't in that space, and it had nothing to do with not being attracted to each other, or nothing like that.
Then the pandemic hit, and we both gained weight,
Yeah, exactly. And I mean,
and that definitely contributed.
Of course. And so we had an area, and then we lost some weight, and we became all of a sudden just meshed physically, just through the roof. And
we also moved. We're in a detached suite. We don't have our landlord's bedroom upstairs, over anymore. So
there was some of that.
Quiet.
Yeah. So we all of a sudden we have a lot more physical intimacy. But the truth is, it's a lot more than that. We have a level of spiritual intimacy, so a level of trust in our emotions, vulnerability, and trust with our emotions. We have a very high level of that. We have a very high level communication, which is really key to being able to get those things.
Yeah.
High level of communication, high level of understanding of ourselves, which, in order to be able to get that emotional that emotional
maybe more
intimacy.
You than me. Half the time I still feel like I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
Yeah, but I mean, we have a high level communication between you and I.
Yeah, even when we're angry,
and a high level of understanding of you and I. So when we combine a lot of these, a lot of it's just personal awareness. It's knowing what intimacy is, and that is something that we work with and for within our relationship, not because we have to have it, but because we desire and love to have that feeling and understanding. And understanding that in order to get there, we have to have high levels of, and we find that the high level of physical intimacy in our relationship is only mirrored really from, and here's, okay, so this is one of the points that I wanted to make so bad that just popped back into my head, is that physical relationship rarely leads to the emotional. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Really, we try to get the emotional feeling from the physical the physical intimacy. And we're trying so hard to, because at the top of the physical state, we get that kind of spiritual feeling. Yeah. We get a spiritual feeling. We get this, we are one with our partner. Okay. We get that. And but that's the only time we do. And so we mistake the physical with the spiritual of the three. Right? Because we have that ultimate feeling at the end. So here's what I wanted to, this is what I thought was so important about the physical, is that, so we tend to strive for the physical. If I'm not having that physical release, then I'm not feeling connected. Well, a lot of the times it's just like any drug. When you are just doing it for the drug's sake, so the high, right? When you're just doing it for the drug's sake, it doesn't get as high anymore. You don't get the bang out of it anymore. And so what happens is that physical intimacy falls. Well, you didn't have the emotional and mental intimacy to back it up. That's why, right? You and I have, and I have to say, have great physical intimacy, like great physical intimacy. But we could not have that. And like we had like that long period where we didn't have the physical intimacy, where we developed an incredible amount of emotional and mental intimacy.
Yeah.
Okay. We did. We had that. Yeah.
I would like to say that what you're talking about is physical sexual intimacy.
Yes.
Because we
okay,
we tend to cuddle, we hold hands, we sit next to each other. You know, I mean, yeah. Okay, so that there are elements of physical intimacy, but not relations.
Okay, so no, let's really define that. Because you are right. We were physically intimate. We spent time together. We held each other in bed, and we talked, and we even
held hands.
We even initiated, but just one of us wasn't there, or whatever, right? But it was never, I can't say never, but it was almost always never an issue. Okay. Yeah. If really one of us wasn't, and it wasn't in that space. It may have
been in that moment if one of us couldn't get there, but then afterwards, when we're out of the emotional side of it and we're rational again, because emotion is not rational at all.
Well, and our personality is not hinged on it, right?
Yeah. And then we're like, I wasn't that. Yeah, it's fine, honey. I don't care. I love you anyways, type
so thing. But okay, so let's differentiate. We didn't have a lot of sexual physical intimacy, but we had a fair amount of physical intimacy, closeness.
Okay? Yes.
Not necessarily sexually close. And climactic would probably be the best way to put it. We didn't have that climactic join. Okay.
Because
we still had some spirituality involved in it because we have a lot of mental and emotional trust. Okay, go ahead.
Well, you can't discount it all as not being sexual.
Right.
We made out a lot.
That's true.
Just because it didn't,
Okay, but so the point is...
I know I'm splitting hairs, sorry.
But the point is, like, we did not have that sexual high.
No.
During
That's true.
those points. Not a lot of sexual highs there. So... But we worked a lot with our mental and a lot with our emotional intimacy. And we had a lot of that. A lot of the holding, the physical intimacy was an expression of those two, right?
Well, and we did a lot of the personal growth stuff then too.
Yeah.
And 2014, 2018, all the that's when we got into Brene Brown and all that.
Yeah. And so we did a lot of personal work. We did a lot of personal work together. We did a lot of massive communication. We created a lot of emotional trust, mental trust, and even physical trust, because I have some physical abuse in my background. Becoming physical, and especially sexually physical for me, is a problem sometimes. And we created, but by doing this, we created a lot of physical trust for me.
Right. And then you helped me because we were hiking for quite a bit.
Yes.
And that can be physically taxing for me with my knees and my back. And you agreeing to go with me, even though hiking's really not your thing, also was a different level of physical intimacy.
Right.
Because if I got stuck, guess who's dragging me out of the mud hole?
Okay, so but we didn't have a lot of sexual intimacy,
No.
okay? And here's where, like I said, people get caught up in the sexual intimacy is creating the spirituality that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna reiterate what that spirituality that we're talking about in intimacy, spiritual intimacy. People are after spiritual intimacy because it is a very cool space of balanced mental, physical, and emotional intimacy that creates an environment of trust, love, understanding, and safety. Okay. That accumulates into a feeling of joy and gratitude. Okay. So people are after that state. Physical sexual intercourse can mimic that for just instances as people climax, because you get that drug high for that instant. And so what happens in relationship, people think that they're getting that spiritual intimacy at the accumulation of sex. And that when they're not having that, and like any drug that you're on, it will eventually wear and you need more of it in order to be able to get the same sensation.
Yeah.
Here's where I want to say we make a mistake. We think that sexuality and sexual release in a relationship is the ultimate spiritual intimacy because of the climax, because of how it feels and how it feels getting up to it. Feels so good. Body feels great. So you're on a lot of drugs. Your body's in that drug state. Well, and when that starts to decline, when that sexuality starts to decline, because there's lots of relationships out there that are, we hate each other most of the time, but we're really good in bed, right? I've heard that tons of times, that the relationship eventually crumbles because the drug wears off eventually.
Or they age.
Yeah, they age and they can't do the same things that they used to do.
Yeah.
And that there is no blend of the intimacies to be able to compensate for that. Because sometimes, like, I mean, if I could not physically get there, you and I would still be fine, because not only can I touch you from a genuine place of love, caring, understanding, that is a place that we've cultivated with trust, and like, so we have that mental and emotional, right? We'll even mix in physical, but just not that climactic sexual physical, that we still have that spiritual high that we were able to create in our relationship.
Right.
And
well, for me, and this is just me talking, I like it when you can get there. Absolutely. I think it's great. It's awesome. Everyone wants the simultaneous, fruition. But I want you to get there for you. I'm already going to be pleased just the way my body works. But it's like, I want you to get there for you. If you are unable to get there, whether mentally you can't get there or physically you're just not there, I'm not offended by that. I think it's great when you can, but at the same time, we're still together. We're still connecting, but we're still intimate.
Well, and here's
being intimate with you. I don't need the fireworks show at the end.
One of the reasons that happens is that on a mental, emotional, and even physical level, that the physicality is an expression of the mental and the emotional, rather than trying to get to these two, the mental and the emotional, and usually mostly the emotional, through the sexuality. Because the sexuality is like, it works in combination if balanced, but you cannot create these from the physical. You can't create those other two from the physical. The physical, if you have a good balanced relationship, the physical manifests from the other two. Right?
Yes.
And if the physical kind of goes down, because it manifests from these two, as long as you have the mental and emotional, even if the physical goes down, the physical doesn't matter as much at all. And so you can still, even with the physical low, you can still create that spiritual intimacy that we're all after.
Yeah.
I think we're done. So I want to say thank you. I love you.
Love you too.
All right. So I love where we went with this. I love that we came up with these ideas of the physical, we from Google, the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. But I love the way that we started to understand, because when I talk about spiritual, I think that it is that expression of the three, all three being able to be balanced, even if the physical isn't as balanced as we talked about at the end here. Right. As long as these two are strong, you still create that spiritual intimacy. And I think that when we talk about, and I'm going to one last time just quickly redefine, physical intimacy is being physically close, physically trusting, physically vulnerable. Okay. And mental is mentally close, mentally close, mentally honest, mentally trusting. Okay. There's that. It's I think mental out of the three is probably the one that's fairly easy to do generally.
Yeah, there really isn't vulnerability with
not a ton of it, but there's still mental vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because our emotions and our mental are tied together a lot of the times, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the mental ties into the emotional. So, but and then our emotional, which is the vulnerability, the trust, the closeness. Okay. Yes. So when we're talking about intimacy, physical closeness, mental closeness, and just to be basic, physical closeness, mental closeness, and emotional closeness. When we're talking about spiritual intimacy, it is the integration of the three in balance. And once that happens, we have a spiritual experience that is a lot longer lasting and makes the climactic version of sex almost pale. And it also, if you have that in your life, makes that climactic version of sex that good, if not better, almost all the time. And so instead of coming at it from the standpoint of physicality to try and get these two, it's these two to complement the physicality, in order to create that kind of spiritual intimacy that we're all after. I want to thank anybody that sat through the entire 2 episodes of this, because we're on almost 3 hours right now. And this who knows, might be a 3-episode one, but we'll see. I don't think so, but we'll have lots of outtakes and we'll have lots of stuff to do another show. So I want to thank everybody that stayed around for the 2 hours or the hour, depending on which side of the episode that you watched. And so I'm always grateful. I'm always grateful to my wife to come out on the show and talk about these wonderful things with me. We always learn something new about each other. We always learn something new about life, and the revelations that happen through these conversations are always fantastic. So thank you.
Any opportunity to talk about making you pasta.
That's true. Thank you, Talia. Thank you, audience, whoever's watching this. We'll see you next time.